I'm Jago Hepburn. I'm the writer here at RBH, and today on Inside Voices, we're talking about the rise of founder-led marketing and personal branding. So who better to talk to than our founder, Debra Hepburn, who is incidentally also my mother.
So you could say, I founded you. How clever am I?
Yeah, you have two things to be proud of now. Founder-led marketing and personal branding are on everyone's lips right now. But what comes to mind when you first hear those terms?
I have a really mixed reaction. So as someone in marketing, I know that if you're a warm, approachable, human person, a brand will connect and build a community far better than if you're not. However, as a person in marketing, I also cringe when it's done badly, when it's all about the person, and the brand could be any brand, and when it comes across as something that's either disingenuous or jumping on a bandwagon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about like creating truth, isn't it? And manufactured truth just comes off so badly. So when I looked into this, there wasn't so much like academic sort of definitions out there really yet about what founder-led marketing really means. It's a lot of SEO searching articles online. But there's one from Birmingham City University which defined founder-led marketing as when the founder of a company takes a hands-on approach to developing the business marketing efforts, which is quite a broad way of saying that. I think there's probably a lot of founders that have a hands-on, approach to the marketing of their companies that aren't necessarily in front of the cameras. And I think some people do this very differently, and some people do this very well. There's some people who, the more they're in front of the camera, the better the stock price goes. When Steve Jobs was around, if he did a keynote, then you knew the stock price was going up for Apple. Whereas Elon Musk, maybe he goes on stage and you might have a stock problem the other way. But I wonder what you thought about how people are handling it differently and how people approach this sort of strategy differently.
I think the founder-led brands that are doing it really well are those that are doing it authentically and genuinely. And I think this is a theme we'll keep coming back to. For me, the people that do it brilliantly actually are the brand. So the people who I would argue need to be founder-led brands and need to be at the forefront of everything they do are the creators. So the writers, the ceramicists, the musicians, the artists, people who actually represent their brand and are their brand all the way through. I think it's far more difficult when you're leading a company of an awful lot of people where you are setting yourself up to be the sole face of that company, because what happens if you fall, fail, trip over? I know that even with family and friends, it's really easy to get pissed off with them. So imagine having to be 24/7 the perfect face of a company. That's asking an awful lot.
Yeah. When you sort of you mix circles, don't you? You become both yourself and you become the face of the business then, which can be quite challenging and quite risk heavy. One area where this is quite prominent has been the beauty industry, where makeup influencers and YouTube massively skyrocketed brands by launching palettes which were named after famous makeup influencers, and they would release their own lines and stuff. But the consequences of that is if you get embroiled in a scandal, something cancelable, which could be something that wouldn't bring down a company but might bring down an individual, then all of a sudden you have the risk of an individual's shortcomings being so powerful because of online culture and that individual reputation that you can, if you've hinged a company on that individual's sort of brand, then you can tear down a whole company with
I mean, if you're cancelled, your brand's cancelled.
Exactly.
Even if you've grown it to a multi-million-pound brand.
Exactly. If you've led with this founder-led marketing strategy. We were saying about how I can't remember the name of the company, but from the Coldplay concert, very much ruined the CEO's career. However, the company did not plummet because that was never a company that came to rise because of him.
Yeah.
He wasn't out there, making YouTube videos and saying about how important the
Although he did go viral.
Whether he expected to or not. I would say that you have quite one of the reasons we've brought you in for this is because you're quite aware of this kind of space. Obviously, having been such a prominent face for your own businesses, of which There's obviously RBH, which we're at here, but there's also young British designers as well, where I'd argue are even more of an inextricable part of that brand.
That was really difficult for me because we set up Young British Designers at a time when young designers didn't have a platform to promote and to sell their brilliant creations. And for me, it was all about the brilliant creators, the fantastic designers emerging in this country. And then I got asked to wear a piece that I'd bought by one of our designers. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think this should be worn by the people you've used in your lookbooks. I think it should be worn by, this goes against everything I believe, but young, beautiful people. And they asked me to, and so I did, and I got in front of the camera. Now, some things that I learned about this were that by going in front of the camera, I could talk about why I loved that designer so much more authentically, because I was able to talk about how I felt wearing their creations. And I did it once, and then people seemed to like it. And then the designer sold more of their pieces. So I did it again, and it kind of showed me that a 50-something-year-old person with a normal body, whatever that is, was able to wear creations in front of the camera, to talk about the designer, and to actually appeal to far more people, because I believe I was doing it authentically. I would never put something on I didn't love. I would never promote a designer that I didn't feel was sustainable, ethical, and loved what they were doing. So I think all of that resonated with our community, and I ended up being in front of the camera far more than I was comfortable with, but it was appreciated, so I did it.
That's interesting. I think that authenticity was so clear. And one of the strange things about comparing now to then is very much that now people pursue this idea of founder-led marketing. It's a laid out strategy, whereas back then, when that was sort of given to you, it was very much sort of you took it upon, you were given it, as opposed to you were following a marketing strategy. And then that led to the authenticity, which I think is why it was so successful, and why in that space and social media it really cut through, because it felt real, and arguably I don't know how many brands back then were doing anything that involved founders and stuff, especially from clothing, and at least on a social media sort of basis. I think probably a lot of the traditional fashion houses would have put themselves above that, where actually it created something brilliant.
And I think that was really an interesting learning for all of us really in marketing, was that the bigger brands were looking at what the indies were doing, at what these sort of like upstarts were doing, these young people emerging into the market were doing, and they were creating this warmth and this genuine interaction with their customers, their prospective customers, their communities, building those communities fiercely, and doing so in a not exceptionally polished way, in not a big brand standoffish way, but we're actually getting to the hearts and minds of their people, as opposed to being quite slick but not actually touching souls. And I think a lot of the big companies very quickly learned that warmth and authenticity in brand marketing was really important, in the way that the smaller brands, the startups, were doing.
Well, I think that's only gotten more and more important as well nowadays. There's something I was reading today, which is about quite how important trust is nowadays to audiences, and also how much smarter audiences have gotten at reading things like corporate speak. They say that people are better intuiting ghost-written pieces and things nowadays. And there's a quote here from Paula Graziani, which says, "Modern marketing is about building trust first, and people trust people way faster than they trust brands." And I think that's ultimately at the crux of the matter. There's another quote here from Maha Abu-Walenin. "In our current trust economy, a founder's voice is your most valuable marketing tool. Do not underestimate the power of being seen and heard."
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes back to it, because I think when people personify a brand, that gives it so much more power.
There's I'm not going to mention the company, but I had a personal example of this very thing. I had signed up to an energy company, leading energy company, because I think they're brilliant. I think what they're doing is brilliant. They're certainly pursuing sustainability far more aggressively and far more optimistically than any other energy company. But they also have a founder, a leading person, who asks you to contact him if you have any problems at all. And for years I sailed on, and then I hit quite a big issue of their making. So I spoke to customer service and they didn't solve the problem. And I thought, I know, I can go straight to the top guy because he's always made himself very accessible. And he says, if you've got any issues at all, contact me. So I did. Nothing. Tumbleweed. Now, they never got back to me. He never got back to me. I did get the problem sort of resolved a different route. I'm still a customer, but I don't have that loyalty. If somebody else comes along who's got that really human direct approach and I believe in them, then I will swap, whereas I would never have done before. And that's that trust thing.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Definitely. Yeah. I think putting yourself in that position where you get a lot of people's trust is so invaluable. But also when you have a lot of people's trust, you have something quite fragile there.
Yeah.
And it can be quite dangerous to play with. So you have to very much balance this founder-led style with the realities of running a company. And I think that's something we will touch on. Do you think it's unique when a company takes on its founders' principles and as such is something that they can shout about? Or do you think it's sort of inevitable that a founder's principles, their ideals disseminate into that culture, and so the shouting about it is just really a strategy? So ultimately, I guess what I'm asking is whether all businesses can be doing founder-led marketing, provided they have a strong founder, or whether it's an avenue only available to a few.
I think it's only unique if it's truly unique, and it's back to that common recurring theme that we have. If you're doing it in any concocted, this feels like the right brand strategy for now kind of way, it will never work because it's something you have to be wedded to, you have to be consistent, and you have to believe in that brand so much. And we have seen so many people who, as people, have big voices, big presences, big profiles, but it's very obvious to the audience if they attach themselves momentarily or in a fleeting way to a brand, as opposed to actually they're creating that brand with their heart and soul and really truly believe in it and its point of difference. And I think that's really where it comes back to. It's great if it's right, and if it's not right, it's very bad.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You can tell when a founder's principles and the company align. You know, and
absolutely.
When it's real.
And some founders don't have great principles, let's face it.
Yeah, so
Elon Musk again.
Yeah, exactly. Now, finally, we talked about YBD, but we only very briefly touched on RBH, which is the building we're sat in now. RBH, you are the H of the company.
I thought that was you now.
We are the H. When you think of it here, of course, you think about Tim Rees and Ian Bradley, the R and the B, but I think both of them would agree that you are the far more recognisable face of the company.
I don't think Tim would agree with that one bit.
Well, Tim's not here. And personality is very much, your personality, I think they would agree with, is very much at the core of our culture. And I wanted to know if you, though, think as a managing director and founder that RBH falls under the remit of founder-led in that respect.
Yes, and definitely not. I think we founded RBH very nearly 30 years ago. We set up RBH because we had a very clear vision of the sort of company we wanted it to be. So founder-led in the fact that we established the ethos, that we believed in a non-hierarchical company where people were all about creativity. We're all about daring, but we're also all about caring for each other, for our clients, and for the planet, and for what our output was. We wanted it to be something special. So yes, in terms of founding an ethos, in terms of it being me or Tim or Ian or actually anyone else, no, because for me the most brilliant thing is to bring in people who are more brilliant than us. And we always said that right from the word go, that what we wanted to do was to have an agency full of people who were more brilliant than we were. And that way we would become one of a team of great minds as opposed to being a single great mind. And I think if it comes really down to it, I think the greatest skill of a founder is finding great people to surround themselves with and to continue the business forward. It's much more about the one for all and all for one than it is about everything being about one person, in my point of view.
Absolutely. I think that's how a real brand or company actually ultimately becomes something generational, doesn't it? Something more than just a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pressing, important question from the social team.
Mm-hmm.
How do we talk about personal branding without being cringe?
You don't talk about it. You just are it. It's a bit like being cool. You either are cool or you're not cool, but you don't talk about it.
I was wondering if you could sum up what makes a good founder-led brand.
Naturally, the first one is authenticity, being absolutely true to yourself and to the brand. I think the second thing is passion. You have to really believe in that brand. You have to want it to create that brand or to work on that brand or to tell the world about that brand from the word go. 3, it's got to be consistent. You can't suddenly decide that you're a bit fed up with that brand or you're a bit fed up with being the face of that brand. You have to be at it 24/7.
Thanks for watching. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, and remember, you can listen to us on Spotify as well.